So I just wanted to be eclectic because many of you have come and seen me before. Some of you have felt my wrath in some of the training that we've done before. I just wanted to be a little bit more eclectic in what I shared with you today in some of my concepts, and then get a little bit physical. You will be touching each other in any way you want, but to be honest, let's just keep it clean for now until I leave. And the first thing I wanted to explain is a concept that works through martial arts. It works in business, it works in friendships, it works in all sorts of stuff. And it is the concept that you are only as strong as your weakest part. So in business, obviously, if you have a part that's very, very weak, that is easy to be capitalized by your opponents and your competition, then they will exploit it and you will fail. If you are in a relationship and someone wants to break it up, they will capitalize on this part and it will fail. Not only that, if you rely on these parts and they are very weak, if you rely on them too much, they will crumble and they will fail. Much like a chain. A chain is not an entire unit, it is a series of links, and if one of those links is weaker than the others, when strain goes onto them, that link will fail, which means the chain is no longer a chain. Make sense? Awesome. So, the way that I thought I'd express that was by showing you some physical movements and some physical parts, which many of you have felt before. Hands up if you have felt the pain from pressure points with me once before, or twice before. Sweet, okay, I can play a little bit more. Our brain is very much like a CPU of a computer. It's organic, it's much more complicated than that, but bear with me on this one. Because the brain controls everything else in our body, if we control the nervous system, we can actually interfere with the brain and therefore interfere with the body and actually control the body. So for a fighter, we don't want to fight another person who is dangerous and working with all of their attributes and their skills and their talents. It is my job to find the weakest link to exploit, or if I can, create weakness to exploit. Make sense? So very much like in business. There are many strengths that we have, and most of what the strength of our business is in our networks of the people that we know and their strengths. So if we have a weakness, we can hire someone with the strength of our weakness to fill in that space so that we don't have the weakness anymore. Following me? Good, good. Don't worry, we'll be penis jokes in a second. To express this, first thing, I'd like to show people how this works a little bit in their body. With their brain, it is dictated by a series of laws, and those laws, unless there is a disorder with the brain or a neurological problem, most of us work exactly the same. Through a process called continuous stimulus muting, we stop becoming aware of the good and the bad in a lot of our lives, and things get muted. First time we eat chocolate cake, we go, that's so good. The second time we go, oh, that was pretty good. Third time we're like, chocolate cake. Third time we feel sick, or we just don't get excited by chocolate cake anymore. What the brain does, exactly, neurological disorders, whatever. So the first way I'd like to express this is if everyone rolls up one of their sleeves. Don't hear all that? Yeah, that's good. Okay, good. Once you've rolled your sleeve up, I just want you, with one finger, to make a small circle, like the size of a 50-cent piece. The new ones, not the old ones. And just keep rubbing the inside of your forearm. Nice. Feeling that? Now, just to humor me, pick another spot about 6 inches further down or up or wherever you're rubbing, and start again and see how much more sensitive it becomes. So now it's ticklish. Keep rubbing that spot. Nice. Now go back to the spot you just did before, and notice now that's sensitive again. And then now just go down all different spots, all over your forearm. Each time you do it new, it becomes more sensitive and much more ticklish, because it's the process called continuous stimulus muting. The longer we do something or have something in our realm of awareness, the less our brain needs to concentrate on it. Now my brain can do other things like look for tigers and snakes and things that might do me harm. But this is the wonderful part about our brain. It is dictated to be aware of the things that are new much more than anything else until we know that it's not going to do us any harm or any major benefit, and then it discounts it completely. That's like walking into a room where there's an air conditioning unit. Anyone hear that? Anyone noticed it until I said, did you hear that? Most of the time you will, until you sit down and you hear for about 3 or 4 minutes and you won't hear it anymore. Anyone been to Rotorua here? Cool, I'm sorry. Rotorua is one of my favorite places to visit, especially for science. And not just because of the multiculturalism. It stinks. It smells pretty bad, unless you've got a thing for sulfur. And then we notice straight over that hill the smell of sulfur, the smell of rotten eggs, the smell of my cousin after he finished sports. It's disgusting, and it's an assault on the senses until we've been there 3 or 4 hours, and then we completely forget that it's there. We go to the hotel room for a bit, and we come out and we can smell it again, because our brain discounts continuous stimulus. It's kind of cool, huh? So in that way, we become quite susceptible to things slightly sneaking up on us. And that's why it's really good to kind of keep reevaluating every once in a while. Because much like a frog in a cold pot of water that is slowly boiling, it will become unaware of the increase in temperature and it will let itself be cooked to death. And we're kind of the same. You throw us in a pot of boiling water and we'll jump out. Or stay Swedish and just stay in there, have a little bit of some salmon. That's the way that our brains work. In terms of we are only as strong as our weakest part and how I capitalize on things, can I have a massive round of applause for my friend Craig? I only am doing this because I still need the... Then I have to say my Craig. Craig is actually a very good martial artist as well, and he's currently played with me a few times and does some really cool stuff. But I just wanted to use you as an example so you know some of the stuff that I do. This is going to be a little bit slow to start off with because it's been a while. We started playing with something from Kali. It's a movement where you actually can redirect a punch and you punch back, and then that person will redirect a punch and then they will punch back. It's kind of like a game of pat-a-cat. But with this game, what we're trying to do is become so immune to punch response that the freeze in our limbic system, fight or flight, actually happens when it freezes first. Freeze, flight or flight. When something scares us, we lock up and we do nothing. Then when we decide if danger is still there and it's still directional, we will try to run away and escape from it. If we can't escape from it, we will fight. And that is the order that things are done. So, knowing how the brain works, we use this methodology where if I'm punching at Craig, he will actually redirect, scoop my hand so it's no longer an attack, and then he punches me back, which I will redirect, and I will scoop out, and I will punch him back. So if we do that for a second. So what happens is you get to a certain extent where you don't have to think about it anymore. It's actually a sensitivity drill. The whole concept is I should be able to do this with my eyes closed based on being able to feel when his body is moving or move out of the way of the punch, knowing that it was probably going to be at my face and knowing the timing and being able to feel it. So this process is exactly what we're talking about. It's making things so continuous that they are muted so that my sensitivity and my neurology doesn't allow me to get afraid and then freeze. Because if I freeze, I can smack on the face. And I'm such a beautiful player. So in this way, so when you're punching through, and he's defending, you should be able to now think about, oh, look, he's putting extra weight in front of his leg. Or look, his friend's coming from that way. Or, oh, here the police are, I'll let him hit. But the whole concept is, when you get very good at doing a skill through competition and repetition, your brain starts to allow you to take the input, thought, response, and it removes that thought and allows you to respond while your brain is thinking about something else. And that's called skill. And that requires practice, and it requires repetition. The concept that I'd like to share with you is consistency. Consistency makes skills and it makes talents. The more consistent you are with anything that we're doing, especially with stuff that we'll share with you, is it's not about learning it and going, what awesome information, here I'll leave it by the door so it keeps the door open when it's hot. You need to practice it and be consistent with that. Let's put in one extra minute. Physically, what I was expressing before is being only as strong as your weakest part. Obviously, Craig is a lot bigger than me. This is not an optical illusion. This is actually, in real life, I'm actually very big. But obviously a lot smaller. And Craig is obviously a lot stronger than I am, so I have to use geometry and structure to be able to break his body down. I'm not throwing around or anything. But so if Craig's either punching or attacking and I'm getting into a position of control, the first thing I want to do is take away his transport, which is down here, for those of you in the front or in the middle, is you stand on his foot. So that way he can't move forward or back or side to side, so I can capitalize on his transport to either continue to attack or defend. So the same thing here. You're standing in on the foot, all the weight transfer is here, so now I can either attack a spot that will be sensitive, making him wanting to step away, which he can't, or pulling him forward to want to step further, which he can't. Or once he stepped further forward and can't move anywhere, I can use my knee to actually destroy the knee, putting a lot of pressure onto the back of this knee, which means that this is now his weakest part. Make sense? So then by putting one finger pressure of weight onto that weakest part, it becomes very, very difficult to defend yourself. If you're doing that same process fast, there's momentum behind it. And now this is where all the dangerous spots for this person are. Obviously this isn't the form to be doing anything more, but in reality, if we go slow motion, we're going to do the same thing. I hit him straight away into the ribs, which caves the body in. Continue to weight forward, use his hand to capitalize. I've actually hit him inside the jaw of the neck on the way through. I'm not pushing on the knee, I'm breaking the knee so he falls down. As he falls down, he may accidentally fall on my toe or my knee as he's on the way down, and then I might trip accidentally with my knee onto his ribs, which shatter them, sending shards of his own ribs into his lungs. And that's the story of Jesus. A big hand for Craig. So I guess what I'd like to do is, by showing you physicality, it just allows you to understand the theory a little bit more, because you can apply it in such a very hands-on way. But the same theories work in all areas of your life. You can either step on the toes of your relationship or your business, and most of us do it without knowing, but a lot of us do it while we know, and it's called self-sabotage. And people who love it, I love that, because we all do, and we should all be laughing. And this is because we have emotional tie-ins to this information. So when we have emotional tie-ins to anything, get hijacked, emotionally hijacked by our limbic system. So it's the oldest part of our brain. As the brain stem comes up through the base, the first part of our brain before the neocortex, before anything else gets created around it, is our oldest and most instinctually animalistic part of our brain, and everything filters through there first. So we get emotionally hijacked very easily. What happens when this happens is we freeze, we run, or we fight. And it does this little loop like that. And most of the time, it happens because of something we've done. We continue that cycle because our brain also develops something neocortex called rationalization. And rationalization is when your wife says, honey, does this dress make you look fat? And the husband says, no, your fat makes you look fat. The dress is amazing. Then the husband gets angry because you're angry at him. But you were already fishing for a compliment that you probably knew wasn't going to come back anyways. So you're both at fault, but you both think you're right. And this is an old adage, but most of us, until you've actually gone through the process and dealt with a lot of the stuff that we should deal with, would rather be right than happy. Which is a huge weak link in our chain. So I would urge most of you to start really playing with your whys. Why did you say what you said? Why did you ask what you asked? And then be really open to the honest answer that you will get back, because again, our brains are a computer. And computers are non-personal, beautifully complex machinery parts that if you ask it what is 2 plus 2, it will say 4. If you ask it why am I so stupid, it will give you a list from 2 years old all the way to my 22 years of why you're stupid. But if you ask, how can I become better, it will give you a list from 2 years old all the way through all the things that you did right. So most of the time, our questions that we ask of ourselves or other people are a massive part in our chain. And if we're very careful about which questions we ask, we get very positive and reinforcing answers back, which actually build us up, which stop us from being emotionally hijacked, which means we can make better decisions, we can do better things, we can hold better relationships, we can make better jokes, hopefully. I have to find out if that's true as I go to TV in a very short period of time. But more than anything else, I'm just glad that Mike was able to bring me along to have a play with you all. It's nice to see so many new faces and some that I haven't seen before. But I would mainly want to give you a question of why don't you learn a little bit more, just for the fun of it, about how you work. Because most of us know more about how to fix our cars than how to fix ourselves. We know more about how our cars or our computers run than we know how we run. And it's a pretty important thing to know, because you can fix a computer. You can replace a car tire, but you can't replace a liver, or you can't replace the spine or the brain. So, as a nice way of ending, the onus is on you. I'm not responsible. It's your bad if anything goes wrong. Bow out. Thank you very much, y'all.